Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first ever time in the history of the Wabi Sabi podcast slash YouTube channel where we have, I was going to say a guest, but we're two hosts, I should say. Welcome.
Hey Daniel, it's so weird seeing my name as Coach Jamie. It's just
Very, very well. So, in our first ever YouTube video, which I posted last week, I introduced myself. But now your turn. Who's Coach Jamie? Who are you?
yeah. So hi everyone. Hi, I'm saying hi to the void. My name is Jamie. So I am a trained pediatrician, and I'm actually doing more training to become a developmental pediatrician. And so that's my professional background. But then now just being inspired overall by what Daniel is doing. We have kind of started this venture in hopefully teaching parents on how to help their kids sleep better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. And you've done, you didn't mention how much work you've done for bedtime, our
Oh,
app. You've
yeah.
done all the Instagram for that and
That's
content.
true. I do lots of content around bedtime, um, just the overall development of uh, the app, right? So, and then I'm a daily consultant to some of Daniel's ideas and concepts, and I have thoroughly enjoyed kind of watching the NATO philosophy crystallize into what it is now, right? So yeah, so
Absolutely. All
mhm.
right, very, very cool. So today we are going to talk about sleep training, which in part happened because we were both on this call today with our two first beta users of our membership program, two moms, and this came up. So I took the liberty of finding a definition of sleep training on YouTube, on Google, I should say, and it just said infant sleep training refers to a number of different regimes parents employ to adjust their child's sleep behaviors. So that's one definition. But what's your gut kind of like on a gut level? How do you react when you read this? What do you feel when you hear this?
um, right. So different regimens. So basically, just like it seems like you give them like a recipe, and here's what you do. And then the idea is to change behaviors of your child, right? So, and so we can go, into detail why that's problematic down the line. But I think often, and I tell you all the time, right? So parents come to me saying, my child is doing this. Can you change X, whatever behavior it is? But I think the problem is when you give them this is what you do step by step without understanding, the underlying, what's going on underneath the behavior. It's going to be problematic down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And when I
Yeah.
hear this out, it's like very similarly. I'm like, I don't think you can necessarily expect like if I do this, this behavior will change in a predictable way. And this is infants, by the way. This was for infants, so
Oh,
quite
yeah.
tricky. But anyway,
But I
today's
think
yeah, go ahead.
before we move on, like um, when you people most people equate sleep training, and I mean I've been in a lot of forums for gentle parenting where just a dimension of sleep training triggers a very visceral reaction, and it's because they equate this to the crying out method, which is we can talk about it in detail later, but or Farber method, right? So, which is really letting your child look teaching your child to sleep independently. So taking you, the parent, out of the equation, and then teaching your child to sleep independently without you being required to be in the room. So that's essentially what sleep training is known to be. But then now there are more gentler versions of it, and so I just wanted to clarify that usually sleep training is equated to crying it out method.
Yeah, no, that was great. This is actually sort of exactly where we're going to go. So, the overview of today's episode, I thought we could do like this to talk about the ideas behind sleep training slash crying out slash Ferber method.
Oh,
And then number two, why it's tricky. And then three, talk about an alternative way. And So starting with this topic, the idea behind this, like you made a good point here initially, which was that sleep training generally commonly is known as anything that we do with the intent of like kind of taking the parent out of the picture, allowing the kid to sleep by themselves. So would you say maybe that crying it out is a one kind of version of sleep training?
Yeah, so crying it out would be, I would say, in the medical term would be extinction, right? So basically, you leave your child, you can let them cry for 5 minutes, and then come in and then check in on them, and then with the hopes that as you're increasing the interval of time, let's say if it's 15 minutes now, and then eventually they'll learn to sleep independently. So the idea is for the child to be able to fall asleep without you being present in the room. And then there are other versions where there's the graduated extinction or the gentler cry it out method, where you can be in the room, sit there, let's say in a chair or a rocking chair, and then kind of move yourself gradually. Let's say first you're next to the bed, and next time, the following night you can be midway between the bed to the door, and then the following night you can be right outside the door, right? So that you're kind of again taking the parent out of the equation, but then gradually, right? So
You,
that's like a gentler
you
version.
can
I
literally,
just like
literally taking the parent out of the picture,
exactly.
right?
So you get the idea is the ultimate goal for any of these strategies is to take you out of the picture. And but let's be clear, it's because we've been there. We were very exhausted, and so you have to empathize. Why do parents want this, right? Because they want either maybe time together. If you want, you know, you and I kind of spend some time together after the kids are in bed, so that you have that goal of maybe or quality time by yourself. Like you've worked, a lot of parents work, get into like the groove leading up to bedtime, and the only time they have to themselves is that time between their child falling asleep and you going to bed, right? So so it's I want to say, and we understand why parents want this so bad, but again, you cannot change behaviors without understanding how everything plays out or what's going on underneath. So yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah, that great point. And I think in the book that we're writing, mostly I've been writing it, but I hope you'll edit it and we'll finalize it together. But like the first chapter is actually saying like this is for you. So anyone who hears this, like this is for you, of course, which it can sound like when we're sort of saying that sleep training is problematic, it can sound like a little bit dismissive, like but we want we want something to do, and that's so understandable because like we know so well like that time between the kids falling asleep and us falling asleep, that can be really golden. So yeah, great point. But now let's look deeper here. So we've talked about kind of what sleep training is, what crying it out is, and maybe before we leave this, do you have a sense of like the Ferber method? Is that what we already talked about? I think it is, right? Or is that something different?
Yeah, I mean, you can either just completely cry it out, like forget about it, and then until they stop crying, or I think far you can't quote me on this, but the Ferber method is just increasing that time interval where you check in. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, that's what I
yeah.
think too.
So
But
essentially, you just let him cry, but then making sure checking in and that your child is safe.
but
And like, yeah,
so we kind of summarized kind of what it is, but let's go deeper behind the idea. Like, I can start here. Like, I think of the idea behind sleep training is that somehow a child can, if given an opportunity, they can soothe themselves. They can themselves see that, oh, I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about. I'm safe, and they can sort of do that themselves, and
yeah,
then they will sleep by themselves. I
yeah,
think that's the idea behind it. And then you can kind of either by kind of completely like, oh no, I'm going to let them figure it out themselves. I'm just going to let them cry till they see that themselves, or little by little, I'm going to teach my child that. That's kind of the underlying idea behind sleep training. Do you see that way too?
exactly. I think I know it's so funny that they call it self-soothe and then as an adult we call it self-regulate. Like it's and then we know that as adults we teach ourselves to self-regulate by engaging your rational brain, right? Your prefrontal cortex, right? But then how do you teach an infant how to self-soothe, right? Because we know that the rational brain, that part doesn't fully develop well into their 20s, even early 30s, I would argue, for some people. But and so the idea that you can teach that, um, you know is, I think, again, you have to think as a parent, is this developmentally appropriate for my kid? Is It's not so much my kid doesn't want to do it, is the question is my kid, my kid able to do it, right? And so you can, I think the difference between coaching adults versus coaching a family unit is that, again, you have to manage expectations for parents. Is that, for example, like, I had a parent ask me, well, I want, how, I was in church and my 2-year old kept moving around. How do you how do you make them stop moving around in church? And then I was like, you don't, because you don't expect them to do that. The same thing. And but so then, why is it when it comes to sleep that we are what to expect them to be able to self-soothe, right? And then, so that's one thing, because then, is that, you know are they able to do that at that level? And then the other thing would be, I mean, you teach this very well in your program for adults, but there are two things that regulate sleep. Well, first would be sleep drive, right? So we know if they are sleepy, they will fall asleep. And the second thing would be hyperarousal. Basically, that hyperarousal is, do they feel safe, right? And so for a kid, where would you expect them to feel, to get that feeling of safety? Because they can't access that rational brain yet, and so they would have to access that from you as a parent. That we call it relational safety. That they hear your voice, know that you're near, and sometimes you touch them, and so that's where they, that dial down that hyperarousal, that comes up when they're about to, fall asleep. So yeah, kind of got into the weeds, but but to your point, yeah. So self-soothing, we talk about that in sleep, but again, the question is, are they able to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at this point we've, for anyone who tunes in here, it's probably quite clear that we don't. I think I speak for both you, myself, and many other people out there, don't necessarily expect an infant to be able to self-soothe. They're just not developmentally there yet. Which then, to a lot of people, probably leads to the natural follow-up question, which would be like, so when would my child be able to self-soothe? What would you answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. I mean, even as like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, you can ask. So you can explore better, probably better during the day when it's not the time. 'Cause when you ask them at nighttime where what are you scared of, then it only just heightens that pressure of you wanting them to sleep, right? So if you want to explore what they're afraid of at night, it's better to have that conversation during the day, and you can start that conversation, when they're 5 or 6, and then, but then you don't really. I think when they're 9, 10, you can again challenge this. Maybe face that fear. Maybe they're afraid being alone in the dark. There are some ways to play around that. Sometimes it's just, most of the time it is just, they're usually afraid of being separated from the parent. Is, I think, what I have discovered just talking to a lot of families, that they really want their, I mean, mom or dad in the room for them to be able to feel safe to fall asleep.
Yes, 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 and actually that brings up something I wanted to mention here, which is like kind of very you know foundational understanding of sleep, which is if you look at wild turkeys, which we have a lot here in Oregon, apparently they mostly run around and they can just fly a little bit. But what they do at night is kind of they fly up to a branch in a tree somewhere, and that's where they sleep, which is basically they just find a safe place to sleep because we are a little bit vulnerable when we sleep, humans and animals as well, right? And same thing with a kid, they have more fear of being alone in the dark because we are naturally a little bit more vulnerable. So it's not strange at all, right, that they're scared at night. And I think, the question of, okay, when is my child ready to like sleep on their own is like there's so much variety there, like, from child to child. But I think it's fair to say that, yeah, like somebody who like a kid who's scared of the dark and is less than 5, 6,
Five,
7,
6, yep.
it's unlikely that you can sort of like have a conversation with them and kind of sort of have them see that there's nothing to be scared of, right? So um yeah, just a little point there about yeah, we got like a little sidetracked into like
No, but
numbers,
yeah,
but
I mean,
we went there.
again, I guess the answer to your question is there's really not one, it's on one size fits all. Like, okay, now he's 7, he's probably gonna have to sleep on her own, and so it just depends.
Yeah,
You know your child. You know, I think you're the parent, so you can gauge whether your child is ready.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think you don't get closer to that. Like as a parent, you have sort of a feeling or a compass or like a gauge, as you said.
Yeah, I think the problem was as parents we hear a lot of noise from everywhere how to do it right, right? And so I think tuning into that, your intuition. I think you mentioned this morning, and then I think deep down you probably would know, knowing your child
Yeah.
and knowing where you guys are. Yeah.
Very, very well. So, we kind of almost, covered this already, why it's tricky, but just like on my end, if I were to summarize why this idea about sleep training is tricky, is that you have a young child who's scared of something, and when you're sleep training, no matter how you do it, you're basically just saying, okay, just face your fear. Just nothing to be, you just do it. It's very, very direct and very it's very offensive in a way. And even when you do it like if you say like the more gentle way where you sort of
Way.
like, oh,
Yes.
tonight I'm gonna stay with you, or tonight I'm gonna let him cry for 5 minutes, tomorrow 10 minutes. It's also very like, I'm gonna allow him to be completely scared for so long. Or it's no matter how you do it with a young child like this, I think is very tricky. Is sort of kind of my summary for this one. And which leads us to like an alternative way, which also comes naturally. So if somebody listens to this and they say like, okay, I've, I kind of follow along your thoughts, and I don't think the sleep training is for me, then, but they have, let's say they have a child who doesn't sleep on their own, right? What should they do? What are your thoughts on that one?
It's so funny because I have like this algorithm as a pediatrician where how old's the kid? Like again, right? And because again, the strategies differ of what the kid is capable of doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's say it's
I
let's
you always approach it with a developmental framework because then you can always deploy empathy, understanding for your child, and it's not. And when you're the thought goes from my child is trying to manipulate me, so I have more time with him or her. It goes to like, oh, he's scared and he doesn't really have the tools to kind of engage his rational brain yet, so I have to share the calm, right? And so that kind of helps you understand. The idea is, Daniel, like um often it's like it's so frustrating when I say solutions to I mean give solutions to families, and then it's always frustrating for them because it's just, you mean I have to do that? No, because I brought them here so change his behavior. So but then yeah, because you have a functioning frontal lobe that you can engage in, and so try to increase that space where you can, oh, he's trying to get more. time with me, and so that opens space for what you teach, openness and acceptance, and then maybe understand why he's trying, you know, to get more time with you that night. But then, we're here to give strategies, right? So it's not like, okay, so are you saying I'm going to be sleeping next to my kid forever until he's off to college? No. I think you can. I think we talked about this morning, where I think most parents think when they have to be nurturing parent or a gentle parent, that means all the rules are out. You can't set boundaries. That's simply not true. You can be nurturing. You can, um, you can share your calm to your kid and still set boundaries. So when I say set boundaries, that means setting. And I'm assuming when they come to you, they've already set a good bedtime schedule where there's waking up at the same time reasonably during the day, that sets your sleep drive. And then they can't uh, and then there are certain rules where I guess bedtime routine, where they have cues like, oh, that means pajama, brushing your teeth, and then reading a book. That's cueing their brain that it's going to be time for bed soon. And then you can decide, this is a very important thing, so you can decide um, to be with them as they fall asleep, or you can also keep the doors open for now, like, I'm just next door. If you need anything, you can come to me. You reminder, you're safe, you can always come to mom. But then know that when they come to you, they can't be playing a game with you, they can't watch a show with you. So there are ways where you can set boundaries, but then also teach them that they're safe and that it's okay, there's nothing to be scared of at night. So does that make
There you
sense?
go. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I know there's like, I'm thinking like, for the audience who listens to this, there's so much more to explore, like so many follow-up questions, so many more details that we'll go over in follow episodes. But I think for now, maybe we can. I'm thinking of sort of a summary here. So in my mind, I think we have seen, okay, sleep training as it is typically like presented is quite tricky. That I think we've seen this. I don't know if it's ever helpful. Oh yeah, I want to sneak this one. I have to sneak with this one. And oftentimes you hear somebody say, "Oh, but it worked for me. Like we sleep trained our like
Yeah.
13-month-old and it worked
Oh,
great."
that's
And like
great.
well,
Yeah.
to me, when I hear that, that just means like, well, that was just a coincidence. They just happened to be like, ready to sleep on their own, is
And
what
I
I
would
think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you have to know, like, there are kids who are, it's certain temperament where they're
That too, yeah.
cautious, and so kids that are, I mean, are really don't care whether mom and dad are there, right? So again, your child well. So certain kids are, if you drop them off at daycare and it's taking forever to peel yourself away, it's probably going to be as difficult at nighttime, but again, so many things to consider. One of them being like, I mean, um, what's your child's temperament, right?
We can
Yeah,
actually summarize it. Like, yeah, no, that was a great point, and we can
yeah,
maybe summarize this. Like the first kind of point to make here is that sleep training, as understood, that you can sort of manipulate your child's temperament or behavior, quite tricky, and not necessarily something we believe in. Number two, if you have a younger child and they're not quite ready for like sleeping on their own, then you are this relational safety. They may need you for some time, and you can make that a little easier by setting some boundaries, like, okay, you'll be next to your child, or available for them, but that doesn't mean you have to like play with them or be doing something super engaging with them. You can just be there to
yeah,
to
yeah.
give them that sense of safety,
Set
right?
of safety. Yeah, set. I think I heard a psychologist call it be a sturdy leader. To know that they can come to you if they're scared, but then also know that there are rules that, and then we can. I mean, I shouldn't say rules because I don't like saying rules. There are
There's
boundaries.
some structure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
structure that needs to be, followed. I know I should be. I'm trying to learn your more gentler lingo.
Lingo.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
happens. So many other things that happens by itself
I know.
after
I
a
know. I
while.
think with practice, I'm really gonna get better at it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this hopefully will
I
provide
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think, again, it's just it is it's a not one size fits all. It depends on the family, and but you, like you mentioned, I think the most salient points there is you offer relational safety, and then um what was the other thing?
Yeah, we talked about kind of the trickiness with the sleep training idea. We talked about like providing relationship safety with still having some structure, and how really other than that, I think we'll continue like providing more details because there's a lot of more follow-up questions that we can talk about. But I think that's it for today.
All right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think
Okay, very, very nice. Well, super fun doing this.
I know.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be back soon. Okay, bye bye.